I'm Claire Hayek. I'm the founder of MSP Teambuilding, Mind, Soul, Purpose Teambuilding. I specialize in team building, culture, and performance strategies. I founded MSP almost 9 years ago with a vision to completely transform workplaces into environments where people are happy, they can grow, connect, and have a sense of purpose with their day-to-day work. As an engineer, I worked with managed teams for more than 20 years, and I saw firsthand how team morale and performance are strongly linked to mental health. And this is what we're talking about today. As you know, today we're talking about how to end the year strong with essential mental health team strategies. So we all know that the year end can be a pretty stressful time for many of us, including us. But remember, stress, when approached differently, when in a positive way, can be actually a catalyst for team bonding, catalyst for growth. So I know this sounds counterintuitive, and this is why we're here today. So we're going to tell you a bit more on how we could do that. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips before I introduce you to our amazing speakers. When you think about it in a way, most of the time when we're stressed, there's a lot of things that we could do just to lighten up the mood and kind of focus on activities that give us some sense of control, okay? So what I'm talking about are very small little health and well-being initiatives that we can implement in our busy schedule, especially, nowadays we don't have time. It's going to be just a marathon till the end of the year. So something like an example, like taking short breaks in between meetings, in between the craziness and the chaos, to include, for example, a stretching session, or even introduce laughter yoga break. Yes, there is such thing as laughter yoga. This is great to manage stress and release some serotonin that we can all use, trust me, right? There are just so many other ways to help manage the stress in general, especially in the year end, and kind of just encourage a well-being attitude, and acknowledge that it's stressful, and acknowledge that we're all busy, and acknowledge all that. It's not about, how can I put this? It's not about kind of putting a veil over it and going, oh God, let's not talk about this. It's actually quite the contrary. These small steps can actually, injecting this just before a meeting or after a meeting, they can really make a difference in how we can maintain a healthy work-life balance. Again, we have 30 minutes together, and I do want to take the time to make sure that we're all bringing you and your team a lot of value and serving you in the best way we can, in the best way possible. So speaking of adding more value to you and your team, we have 3 incredible speakers. I am so excited to have them here with us today. And I'm proud to call them our partners in our health and well-being programs here at MSP Teambuilding. So let me take a minute to introduce them for you. And then we're going to go on. I will be your host, and I'll be asking each one of them questions. There will be a little bit of time, hopefully, at the end of this session, so you can please do share your comments and questions you may have, and we will pick some questions and try to address them during this LinkedIn Live. All right. Starting with Gabriella Mengstab. She's expertly bridges the worlds of financial services and holistic well-being. This fusion actually led to the development of her wellness programs, which she have been recognized as a finalist in the Doing Good category by Money Management in Barron's 2023 awards. Employing her expertise in neuro-linguistic programming, Gabriella crafts transformative workshops on stress management, sleep, and mindfulness. Hi, Gabby. We have Anne-Marie Roy echoing her belief, your life is only as good as your mindset. Anne-Marie mentors managers and entrepreneurs, emphasizing mental wellness. And MIT Sloan Neuroscience for Business graduate. She blends academic insights with genuine human connection. She's skilled in neuro-linguistic programming, and excels in understanding and navigating the emotional and professional challenges faced by business professionals. Last but definitely not least, we have Leah Weisberg, a dedicated holistic psychiatric nurse and psychotherapist that focuses on eradicating emotional suffering and enhancing life, work, and love through holistic mental health strategies. Committed to understanding each individual's unique needs, Leah's tailored interventions and leadership reflect her deep passion for promoting mental well-being and resilience. Welcome, ladies. So I'm just going to ask you to mute and unmute and put on your videos, if you may. I think I can't see you all, so it doesn't matter at this point. I'm just going to focus on the content and talking and asking you really relevant questions that we've kind of gathered for you here today. Kind of from talk to some of our clients, talk to some colleagues in different industries to see what would be really interesting for you, for us to answer for you today. Okay. I'm going to remind you that at the end of the session, we'll have about 2 to 3 minutes for Q&A. So do please share your comments in the chat in the meantime. All right. Gabby, we find ourselves in the busy end of the year period. How do you think can people transform stress into a positive force in their work, in their personal lives, and in their communities?
That is a great question, Claire. And you know how the saying goes that in the midst of chaos, there's always opportunity. And this also applies to stress, right? In the midst of every situation, every stressful situation, there's also opportunity. And as a performance and wellness coach, stress is a word that I use quite a bit. And I think it needs to be broken down because it has many dimensions, has a lot of meanings. There's good stress and bad stress. There's acute stress. There is a chronic stress. And technically, what do we mean when we say we're stressed out, right? We mean that we are a bit overwhelmed and that the demands of life actually exceed the resources that we have. And our goal should not be to get rid of stress because it's part of life. Actually, in some cases, stress is actually something really good that we can use to grow. But the goal should really be to increase our capacity in how we deal with stress. So then the question becomes, how do you do that? Well, before we go into that, I want to take a few minutes to just talk about what happens in our bodies when we're stressed out. Our cortisol goes up. It turns on our sympathetic nervous system, which is the part of your nervous system that's responsible for fight or flight. Mm-hmm. And when this happens in a chronic way, it creates inflammation in the body, and it turns into all sorts of diseases like depression, anxiety, and all the things that you really don't want to do. And the interesting part is that the body doesn't actually distinguish between mental stress, so something that's created by your thoughts, or an actual threat, right?
Right.
And so the way you actually can increase your capacity for stress is in 2 ways. One is mental, so using the mind to calm the body, and the other way is physical, using the body to actually calm the mind. Mm-hmm. So let's start by talking about the mental capacity. First and foremost, we have to actually acknowledge that we're stressed out, right? Rather than ignoring it or running away from it, we have to ignore it. We have to acknowledge it. Our stress is usually trying to talk to us. It's like, hey, I'm over here, pay attention to me.
Right.
So once we actually acknowledge it, you can remove the resistance, because as you know, when you resist something, it actually persists and gets louder and louder. The second thing that we can do after we actually acknowledge it is actually change our relationship with it. Mm-hmm. So when we think stress, we equate automatically bad, right?
Right.
But what if in the moment of stress, when we feel overwhelmed, rather than making it a problem, we actually look at it as a challenge to be solved and an actual opportunity for growth. So what I like to say is, why don't we try to become a lion rather than a gazelle? And what I mean by that is, just imagine you're in the jungle. You see a lion chasing the gazelle. Both technically are stressed, right? Because their cortisol is going up, their adrenaline is pumping, but the gazelle is running away from the stress versus the lion is actually using it as fuel to actually catch the prey.
Mm-hmm.
So stressful situation could work just in the same way if we just reframe the way we approach it. We actually can use the situation for our growth, to learn something from it, and to also learn something about ourselves.
Okay.
And last but not least, when it comes to like chronic stress, things like caregiving or, having a boss that you don't really like, we've all been there. What you want to do is actually try to adopt radical acceptance, right?
Okay.
One of my teachers used to say, just choose it, right? You don't have to live with it, but when you choose it, it doesn't own you. You actually own it and you actually can solve for it. So now that we've covered the mental aspect of it, so, you see reframing your mind, growth opportunity, and also radical acceptance. Now let's talk about the physical aspect and what you can do. First, you can use deep breathing. Deep breathing stimulates the vagus nerves, calming your mind and initiating a whole cascade of healing responses. With just your breath, you can actually control your heart rate, your brain activity, and funny enough, even your weight. Your breath is so powerful. And the best part is it's free and you can activate it anytime you want. So for you to have a calming effect, the way you use your breath is first of all, you have to breathe from your diaphragm and also make the exhalation longer than the inhalation, as well as using your nose to both breathe in and breathe out. The other one is exercise. We know it's a very powerful tool for stress management. It's not only there to keep you physically fit, but also emotionally and mentally resilient. And lastly, there's things like, heat therapy or cold showers. Sauna, for example, it increases your heart rate variability, which is the measure of stress resilience. The more variable your heart rate, the better equipped you are at managing stress. Okay. There's also things like mindfulness strategies and also eating, right? A lot of us don't think that we don't think of eating and stress in the same level, but if you're consuming junk food and sugar, your body actually goes under stress. So you're diminishing your capacity to actually deal with stressful situation. But right. When you eat right, you actually increase your capacity.
Right.
So those are like some of the tools that you can use. I know I've said a lot, and don't try to implement all of them at the same time because you're going to get overwhelmed. But the goal is really to just pick one that resonates with you and integrate it. Knowledge is great, but like transformation really happens when we actually integrate the information and we get into action.
Okay. Wow.
So,
thanks so much, Gabriella. That was great. Hands-on tools. That's the way we like it. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I have to kind of keep it going because my fault. We started late because of our little technical issue, but it's all good. It's all good. We're just here to add value. So let's keep going. Thanks again, Gabriella. Anne-Marie, in your experience, what are the most effective strategies for creating a mentally supportive environment in the workplace? Is that even possible?
It is possible, and it comes down to one strategy, which is communication and openness and awareness in the workplace. What does it mean? So we have to equip management levels with training on mental health, well-being, to make sure that they can communicate effectively and openly with their employees, colleagues, and everyone. So what it would look like in a day-to-day, on a day-to-day basis for a manager? Well, it means like if you have a meeting with your team and it's a stressful moment, it's the end of the year, you have to reach your goals, everyone is stressed out, we have to deliver. Well, it means that in that meeting, you take time to address the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
It's a stressful time. So what can we do about it? Being open as a manager to receive people in your office, like having an open door policy about mental health, well, when your employees want to talk about it, so they know that it can come to you and that you're going to be there and openly receive the information and find a solution as well. It also means that people are trained or people are aware that if they see a colleague or an employee having more, like a bit more impatient than usually for a long period of time, that they lack motivation, they don't want to come to work, they are more absent than usual, they might want to address the situation with the person, because in most cases, people around us are going to see that we are experiencing fatigue, sadness, that we're not going to be as happy as usual. We're going to change. They're going to see it way before we do. So being able to say, hey, I'm worried about you, or to go see a manager to say, I'm worried about Anne-Marie because she's not like herself these days. Maybe you can have a chat with her. So on a daily basis, it looks like that. It looks like people are talking about it. And we say that, it's 2/3 of people having a mental issue. So it means that it happens to people around us. If there's anyone here who hasn't had someone in their family with some mental health problems, well, there's not a lot of people who don't experience it. Maybe not firsthand, but sometimes it's a neighbor, it's an aunt, it's our grandparents, it's our father, it's our sister, it's our daughter, it's our son that will experience it at some point in their life. So if we can be open about it, because it's not taboo, it's the big thing. It's we can have results, and you have to understand that results only come from what? From humans. We're all in this together. So if in the workplace we have fatigue or we're not motivated because we have mental health issues and we cannot talk about it, then everyone is screwed though. Well, so in the end, talking about it and being open about it, but also being trained and having tools to discuss it in a proper way, because we don't want to bring all the problems in a meeting with the staff. That's not what I mean. It's really to being open about it. So it's fostering a culture as well of talking about the pressure in the workplace. We know we have a lot going on. What do we do about it? And activities, like you said, is going to help boost serotonin, dopamine, and then reduce cortisol. So that's going to help as well. So those are the strategies. So team building activities, and then being open and talk about it, raise awareness. Yep.
Yeah, and basically, I love the whole bringing this up. The whole taboo, right? It's stop making it such a taboo. You know, I think there's a lot of things that have changed, and people are more open about it. But there's still a lot of work to do. But thanks so much, Anne-Marie. That was very, very helpful. Moving on to Leah. Leah, looking at the year-end stress, I'm going to ask you a really important question. I mean, we get this a lot. How can we proactively maintain our mental health in general and continue doing so in the upcoming year? So we're wrapping up, but how can we also proactively step into the new year with a good strategy? I think you're on mute.
Thank you so much for your question, Claire. And I just want to echo something that Anne-Marie said about openness and communication, because the most protective thing we can have in our lives to keep us resilient and strong in the face of stress is connection. And so that's fostered through proper communication channels, and having people do team building activities where they feel that actual connection with one another. And during the holiday season, we get more time than usual to be with our family members. And we want to use this as a way to foster connection, because it's one of the most preventative and protective factors that we can have to mitigate the effects of stress and to prevent mental illness. And even for those of us, and it's 1 out of every 2 adults who struggle with anxiety, depression, or ADHD or a trauma background, we can decrease our chances of having an acute exacerbation of our condition, or having to go on sick leave or take time off for stress, when we maintain healthy connections with one another. So I think this season is really a time and a month to focus on relationships, connections with our loved ones, with our workplace, with our peers, with our children and our family members, as a way to stay well for the end of the year. But for going into 2024, something that is very important, and this again, Anne-Marie was talking about how most people won't know for themselves when they're starting to spiral into a dark place, an anxious place, a worried place, and that we really rely on each other to identify these things. So another way to do this in a way, in a workplace, is through preventative screening measures. So research and science over many years have developed rating tools and inventory scales that measure symptomology. And this is how a psychiatrist or a psychiatric nurse would measure your symptoms and screen you for a condition that, with a clinical interview, could indicate a particular diagnosis. So through these tools at Dynamic Health, what we do is we actually welcome companies to use our platform to screen every single employee, 20-minute online screening test that reviews anything from addiction to depression to trauma to anxiety symptoms and many other things, to identify, are you a low risk, medium risk, or high risk individual that needs intervention? Now, when we do this, it's completely confidential, and we use these tools to then give an aggregate report to leadership to know the mental health status of the workforce. And by looking at this and being preventative and proactive, the strategies that a company will roll out in 2024 to sustain the mental well-being of their staff should be in line with the data that was collected that shows us what the problems are for your company. So that's what I recommend for 2024. First, let's end 2023 in connection and in relationship. Let's boost the oxytocin in ourselves, which is the loving, cuddling hormone. And let's go into 2024 understanding where our staff are struggling and where they're feeling they need support. Get them those screening tools to implement and see where they're going, and come up with a strategy for your workplace based on some assessment and data findings.
Right. That's so useful. Thank you so much, Leah. And, you're talking about family and connections. That's so important. And it's something that we kind of take for granted. And to kind of, you brought it back to what I started with, which was team recognition. During this time, ending this year with good, strong team recognition, it's very heartwarming. It really just helps a lot with that good feeling, having that deep connection, and feeling understood, feeling appreciated, and feeling that all this effort that we've put into our work is actually shines, and people see me. You see what I do, right? Thanks again a lot, Leah. I'm gonna wrap up here with one last question. We have if we can keep it to 30 seconds, I'm sure you can do it. We're going to start with Leah, but it's going to be the same question for you, Anne-Marie, as well as Gabriella. So how can we lessen the stigma that surrounds mental health discussions at work, in your opinion?
So the one thing to know is where stigma comes from. We assume that stigma comes from other people believing there is something wrong with us and that we are labeled a particular illness. But in fact, that's not true. Stigma comes from yourself. It's called self-stigma. And most people stigmatize themselves for having symptoms, whereas most of our colleagues and friends would be more than open and willing to help us and guide us through these processes. So to remember that just because you feel the stigma for yourself does not translate into mean that everyone else around you is going to feel the same way about how you're behaving and acting or feeling. It's usually how everyone feels about themselves that creates stigma and barrier to care and intervention.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Thanks so much, Leah. Anne-Marie?
Well, thanks, Leah. I do agree with you. It comes from ourselves, the way we feel about ourselves, and also it has to become something that we talk more about. It goes back. I think it's my trade line today, like my trademark. It's communication. Talk about it. Just talk about it. It's in the workplace, yes. And why is it a good place to talk about it? Because we're all humans. We all experience it, and performance is based on human resources. Mm-hmm. So if we don't look at that and we only look at the numbers and the sheets and stuff, we're going to miss the most important thing that is in the center of everything that we do, which is human resources. So, and if you start talking about what you're experiencing in mental health, you're going to be surprised how many people experience something similar or different, right, and they really want to talk about it.
Right.
So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Gabriella?
Yeah, very insightful. I do agree with both. You know, stigma starts with self. The second one is communication. And I would say that it needs to start from the top, and it needs to be part of culture, not just mental health, but wellness in general, right? If we have a CEO that's taking a break out of his busy schedule to go have lunch, with other colleagues, or taking time to work out, or doing mindful practices and encouraging everyone in the company to do it, guess what? Employees are going to follow, right? And so it needs to be ingrained in the culture, and it needs to be part of what companies do. You know, companies spend a lot of money doing trainings like skills-based training, but they don't do personal growth or, self-care training. We didn't get a manual on how to be human, right? This is not even taught at school. We're just kind of winging it and learning it. And I think companies really need to invest in this area. There is a huge gap for it. And if companies don't know what to do, they can rely on people like us to kind of help them customize and come up with something that works for them. But I think it really starts at the top.
Definitely. Walk the talk and be an example, right? And be vulnerable. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Thanks, Anne-Marie, Gabriella, Leah.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you really for your answers. Very, very rich tips and tricks. I do appreciate it. We all do. Before I close the session, I just wanted to encourage everyone to share suggestions in the event comment section on topics involving workplace challenges that you'd like us to address in the future. This is not our last LinkedIn Live, I can promise you. So we're aiming to host another LinkedIn Live session before year end. I am very ambitious, I know, and it's all in the serving and really trying to help before the year end. And I just love to connect with people. So we're really going to try to do another one. So please do share your ideas. And if we don't get to do one, we're definitely going to be doing tons more in 2024. Please do follow our page for the mere reason so you are aware when we do go live. If you're interested to hear more about us and updates on future events, please do so. So wrap it up here. Have a wonderful evening. And I really look forward to connecting with all of you again soon. Thanks again.